While we're waiting to get started, I'm going to encourage people to go to that chat box and introduce themselves, start getting some engagement going. We're going to have some engagement today with all of you, sharing out some different resources and some ways that we can work towards effective river management. So thank you again for joining. My name is Angie Furman, and I'm the River Training Center Coordinator for River Management Society. And I would like to welcome everyone today to our first session in our Wild and Scenic River Training Series, Foundations of Effective River Management. And in today's session, we're going to be exploring the river management technical core competencies that were recommended by the Interagency Wild and Scenic Rivers Coordinating Council. We're going to look at like a self-assessment and discover where to access some information to help increase our knowledge, skills, and abilities for effective river management and help everyone navigate their roles more efficiently and effectively. So as I mentioned, my name is Angie Furman, and I'm the River Training Center Coordinator for River Management Society. And I'm here to help moderate today's session, kind of keep us moving along. And over the next 6 sessions in this series, you'll be seeing me. I like to think of it as kind of like I'll be the person helping monitor the chat, making sure everyone gets their questions answered. If you have any technical difficulties, you can always reach out to me. So I'm here to help you all have a good time while you're here. So just a couple things as we're going through our session. Again, I see tons of intros into the chat now. If you haven't already, would love to hear and see who you are. And then also, like I mentioned, we're really trying to be more engaged in these sessions. We don't want it to be so much as a sit and listen, though there might be times where that's happening, but more active engagement. So really go to that chat. We will have times where we ask questions and you can raise your hand when we call on you. You can unmute. So things like that. I don't think we're going to be using any breakout rooms today, but I did just put that on there. Like, we're in a Zoom meeting. Please use all the tools that we have. And then also later on in the session, we're going to be making a collective document that you can then download and take with you. And we'll be explaining that, but you should be able to access it fairly easily without having to sign into anything. So a couple more things today. On that note of engagement, really encourage you all to be here. Just a couple other notes, like everyone's an expert here. Everyone has varying experiences and levels of working with wild and scenic rivers or just rivers in general. So we really encourage you to share. And then here in a minute, I'm going to be asking folks to turn on their cameras. We're going to do a little camera-based icebreaker. And if you're joining by the phone, I apologize that it's not as easy to do the camera icebreaker, so I'll just ask you to bear with us for that one. Other things to keep in mind today, it's okay to be raggedy and think through things. And lastly, what's true today might be different tomorrow. I think that's just a good thing to keep in mind. Again, just real quick to cover our purpose today. So it's really to gain familiarity with the core competencies and the knowledge, skills, and abilities relevant to river professionals to really help be effective when managing rivers. We're going to do a knowledge, skills, and abilities self-assessment. Don't worry, you don't have to like share out your results with anyone. This is more for you. And then we're going to also review and share out a ton of resources. So if you're looking for resources related to river profession, like, you have come to the right place. All right, now I would like to introduce a couple of presenters that I've got with me today, Colter, Pence, and Monica Zimmerman, and I'm going to invite them each to introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Colter.
Hi there. And right as I speak, my computer made that little blip. Sorry. Yep, my name is Colter Pence. I work for the U.S. Forest Service with the Flathead National Forest in Northwest Montana. In the river world, I'm the river manager for two of the three forks of the Flathead River system. I work with the North Fork and Middle Fork of the Flathead River, which is a wild and scenic river as well. I also work with the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex, where some of our river runs through there. And I'm looking forward to talking about knowledge, skills, and abilities with everybody today.
Good morning, I'm Monica Zimmerman. I'm an outdoor recreation planner with the Upper Snakefield office in Southeast Idaho, managing the Snake River, Teton River, Henry's Fork in that area. I'm currently working on a detail with our national office, but I'm one of the representatives, BLM representatives on the Interagency Long Snake River Coordinating Council. For those of you, I noticed there's a lot of non-agency, federal agency participants in this training. It's a council made up of representation from all the federal agencies. And the purpose of the council is to provide consistent guidance for implementing the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. So I look forward to today. So thank you.
Thanks, Monica, and thanks, Colter. So now we've learned a little bit about Colter and Monica. We want to learn a little bit about all of you. So I'm going to stop sharing, and this is my experimental icebreaker. So thank you all for being my guinea pigs. So if you have the ability to, I'm going to ask everyone to turn on their cameras. And while we're doing like the presentation, I totally get it. Like you don't need to have your camera on, but for this icebreaker to work effectively, it helps to have your camera on. If you don't have that option, I encourage you to check out your Zoom control bar where you can see the reactions and you can maybe react that way. But the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask a question. And if it does not apply to you, so for example, I'll ask like, do you like ham sandwiches? And if you don't like ham sandwiches, just put your thumb in front of your camera. And so in the end, we're going to see everyone who likes ham sandwiches. And that's as simple as it is. And so it's just going to help us kind of like loosen up, get to know each other. I think sometimes, you know, being on Zoom, we don't have the opportunity to really get to know that much about each other. So I'm going to start with some fun ones. So keep your camera on if you have, or, you know, stay here. Don't put your finger in front of your camera if you have read all the Harry Potter books. But if you haven't read all the Harry Potter books, put your thumb over your camera. All right, so we've got some folks who have read all the Harry Potter books. Nice job. All right, how about if you have a dog, do not put your finger over your camera. But if you do not have a dog, go ahead and... All right. Some people with multiple dogs. How about if you have a cat? If you don't have a cat, put your finger over. Oh, I see 4 cats. Holy moly. Okay. So we got a nice mix of... How about if you have another pet, not a cat or a dog? If you don't have another pet, put your finger over your camera. Well, that's fun. We got some other pets, and feel free to share in the chat what those pets are. Love to know. All right. How about if you have worked directly on or with a wild and scenic river before in any capacity, however you want to do that. If you have, keep your camera like this. If you haven't, go ahead and put your finger over the screen. I've worked a lot with wild and scenic rivers, but I don't think I've ever worked directly with one, like on a plan or anything. Cool. How about if you've worked with wild and scenic rivers for more than 5 years? If you haven't, put your thumb over. Cool, so we've got some good experience here. We got a nice mix of folks. All right, well, that was my last question. And I want to just say thanks to everyone for participating in that. I really appreciate just fun way to kind of break the ice and start to get engaged here. So now I am going to pass it over to Monica. She's going to get into a little bit of about these core competencies, which are really the foundation for effective river management. So go ahead, Monica.
Great. Were you going to start the PowerPoint?
Oh yeah, I am. Here we go.
Great, thank you. Also, I haven't been in a session where there's so many Monicas on one call. Go Monica Morin, I think there's a Monica Bueller. Usually I'm the only Monica, so it's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so we'll just jump into competencies and knowledge, skills, and abilities. Basically, the Office of Personal Management, or also referred to as OPM, identifies or defines competencies or KSAs. And what's on your screen there is a competency is a measurable pattern of knowledge, skills, and abilities that an individual needs to perform work, roles, or functions successfully. So how do you succeed in your position, essentially? What are you competent at? Competencies specify the how of performing your job tasks and what you need to do to perform your job successfully. Next slide. Just to define knowledge, skills, and abilities a little bit further, knowledge is a body of information that is directly to the performance of a function. So what knowledge you have to perform a task related to river management. A skill is the competence to perform a learned act. So what are the skills? So taking that to rivers, what are your boating skills? What are your whitewater rescue skills? Are just some examples of a skill that you may have to succeed in your job. Ability is the competence to perform an observable behavior or a behavior that results in an observable product. So those are knowledge, skills, or abilities. Many of us refer to them as KSAs. And the next slide. Okay, so in this session, we are specifically going to look at the core competencies for river management specialists. And we will be reviewing the Interagency Wild and Scenic Rivers Coordinating Council Technical Core Competencies for River Management Specialists and Non-Specialist Keepers. So pretty long name, but just to give you a little bit of history of how this technical paper came about. So going back to 2016, the River Training Center didn't exist. We were unfortunate in the sense that we didn't have a river training center that could focus training on a lot of what Angie does, providing training for river specialists and even non-river specialists. And so the interagency members of the Interagency Council determined we're really striving to come up with or to develop a training center to focus on river management and to provide the needed training and skills for river management specialists. And so we realized that in order to frame this training center, we needed to be able to identify what the core competencies are for river management specialists to help. Essentially, the core competencies would help us guide the training and help us understand what the need is for river management specialists. And so what we did is through an agreement with the University of Idaho, we worked with Dr. Ed Crumpy, Dr. Bill McLaughlin, and retired BLM river manager Laverne Grusing. And the three of them, they actually they adapted the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. That was a wilderness training center many of you are familiar with. It has been in place for many, many years. And so we were trying to frame a training center similar to the Arthur Carhart Training Center. And so Ed and Bill and Laverne used the core competencies that was developed for the Arthur Carhart Training Center as kind of a starting point to get the juices flowing to develop competencies for river management specialists. And it was pretty cool because what they did is they reached out to river managers, park rangers, non-river specialists such as biologists, a number of people to kind of get a sense of what is it that people need to succeed at their jobs. So that was the first thing they did. They did workshops to gather that information and essentially came up with a draft of core competencies. And then, reviewed that. A lot of the same people that were interviewed also reviewed that document. And then they actually put on a session, and I think it was at one of the symposiums, I believe, where they put on a session to go over the core competencies and essentially narrow it down even more. And so basically the final product is this document that's there in the blue little box that the Interagency Wild and Scenic River Coordinating Council adopted in 2018. And that this technical paper pretty much set the framework for the River Training Center of trying to identify what the needs are for the specialists and how to adjust the training needs for for the training center. You want to go to the next slide, Angie, please. This is the document that I am referring to, and I'm just going to pull it up on the screen really quick and show it to you. I just wanted to, can you see that okay, Angie?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. So this is the paper, and I'm not going to go word by word into the document because it is there. It's 31 pages for one. Also, with Colter's exercise, we're going to get into this a lot more in depth. But this is a great resource for you, especially if you're just starting your career, or even if you're in the middle of your career, at the end of your career. This is a great resource for you to help you develop individually and manage the rivers for which you're responsible for. But I just wanted to, excuse me, to pull out some key things in the document. And like I said, we'll go into aspects of the core competencies in more depth. But the main point here is that these competencies are intended to be applied to federally designated wild and scenic rivers, but they can also be utilized for non-designated rivers. Essentially any river that's managed by the federal agencies or rivers managed through partnerships with federal agencies and even non-governmental organizations. And then the document is split out for competencies related to river management specialists. So these are employees that have varying levels of responsibility for river program planning. So whether it's visitor use management, decision-making, so all of their duties are pretty tied to the river program. And then there are competencies related to river management and non-specialists. And so this could be more like our biologists or other entities that their primary duty is not a river program management, but they do have a certain level of responsibility as it relates to river management. And so that's how this document is split out by river management specialists and river management non-specialists. So just scrolling to the next page, the document is also split by the levels of expertise. So that's what's in this section right in here. And so you can see for river management specialists, the level of expertise are entry level. So those are those individuals that are just starting their career with the federal agency or non-federal agency, but they recognize that they have some management component related to rivers. Full performance, this is for individuals that can independently identify and analyze river management opportunities. And then the expert level, these are KSAs needed to fully and independently identify and analyze river management opportunities with complex situations. And then going down, similarly, we have something for the river management non-specialists and their level of expertise. So you can see there's a recognition level, coordination level, and leadership level. And then the document goes right into the 8 competency areas. So once again, as I mentioned, these competency areas were developed by talking to you, people like you, those of you who are managing rivers, whether it's a designated wild scenic river or not. What are those areas that you need to be competent in to be able to successfully manage your river? And so the first one is Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, history, law, regulation, and policy, and then other relevant laws and policies. And as I mentioned, Colter is going to get into these in more depth in her self-assessment. But these are areas where you need to be competent for managing your particular river. And then here's the other 6 KSAs needed. What do you need to be able to do river management planning? Whether it's programmatic level or whether it's just a very specific project level planning process. What knowledge, skills, and abilities do you need? The river management skills. So these are those, can you boat? Do you have whitewater skills? What are your monitoring skills? Or sampling? So say you're a biologist, and what are the sampling methods that you need to use? So what are those in the field type field skills that are needed to succeed in the job? Visitor use management and monitoring. Many of us deal with this on a day-to-day basis on how to manage people and then how to monitor that use. Also, how do we manage the natural, cultural, and recreational resources, and then how do we monitor those resources? The 7th one is river information management skills. So this could be managing spatial data or non-spatial information. So there's a lot of information that could go into that one, and the skills needed are related to that competency area. And then the last competency area is collaboration and engagement techniques. I saw on the participant list, we have some individuals that are here from nonprofit organizations or partner agencies. So what are the knowledge and skills that we need to have to work with our partners? How do we do information education? So this is a really important competency with our management of the rivers that we're responsible for. And really quick, and like I said, this document's 31 pages, so I really encourage you to review this on your own and get familiar with it. But the way that it's split out is the orange, these are the competencies related, the information related to river management specialists. And the way it's framed is along the left-hand side, you can see entry, level, full, performance, and expert. And it lists the different types of positions that those may be, and the different, gives a description or different agencies. And then the same thing is for the river management non-specialists. So same thing, the different levels along the left-hand side, and then the different types of positions that could be in these different levels that are within the different columns. And then the way that the document is set up is it goes right into the 8 competency areas. And once again, orange is for the river management specialists. And so these are the competencies that are needed. This is the Wild and Scenic River competency. And then these are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed to succeed at the entry level. And it just goes on down for each level, and it covers all 8 of the competency areas. And so with that, since I've introduced this technical paper to you, I'm going to turn it over to Colter, and she's going to get into a self-assessment where we will have the opportunity to go into this document in more depth and give you the opportunity to get comfortable with it and understand the aspects of the technical paper.
Okay, thanks, Monica. So where I'll pick up here is in a minute here, Angie will share another document. I hope you, well, please do access it, and I'll talk you through what that is. what that document represents. So it shows the knowledge, skills, and abilities as identified for an entry-level river specialist. Monica pointed out there's river specialists and non-specialists, and then there's different levels within those two columns, we'll say. What we did is we focused on one chunk, the one chunk being river specialist entry level. That's likely a river ranger type or someone starting their career in river specialized work. We could have just as easily or as appropriate focused on the KSAs for expert level river specialist or non-specialist. I want to encourage you, depending on your walk in life and what's, you know, what your purpose in being here is, consider that we're going to, for the remainder of this presentation, focused on the entry-level river specialist KSAs. But if it's more appropriate for you, whether where you are in your river management career or the people you work with, you might be thinking of their training. If it's better to be in a different one of those quadrants, we'll say, a different cluster, then take the same tack here and focus on those KSAs. So it's sort of a meta point here I think I'm making is we're focusing on one chunk of it. And even if that's not appropriate for you, you can see how we're doing this self-reflection activity, and you could try it in your own way in a different cluster of the core competencies. Okay, so while I was talking, Angie downloaded the resources. You can access it on by downloading the file or the Google Doc. Angie, did you have anything you wanted to say about how to best do that before I launch into it?
Yeah, like you mentioned, folks should be able to access the document by clicking in the chat on the document. And if for some reason that isn't working, you can click on that link and it's going to bring up a Google spreadsheet, and you'll notice that you don't have the ability to edit it because I have it in view only mode. But if you go over to file, you should be able to go to download, and then you can download your own copy. That way, if you want to work on filling it out for yourself or the hypothetical person, you can do that as well. So,
yeah. And that is
just
I was gonna say that is exactly what we're going to do. Is we are going to play with it live here. So please do download it, and you can save that for your future use. So let's orient to the document as you're accessing it. And you'll see there in the spreadsheet, we have listed all of the major core competencies. Number one being the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, history, law, regulation, and policy. Number two, other relevant laws, policies, and tools for river managers. Number three, river management planning. I'm not going to read them all out there. I just want you to kind of get a flow for it. I believe there's 8, if I remember, 7 or 8. Within each of those major topic areas, there's the knowledge, skills, and abilities that sort of break that down. So let's pause on information management there. Within river information management, you'll see there's some knowledge elements that you should want to have. Maybe you do have it. Maybe you want to gain that. There's some abilities there to have within river management, information management skills, and also actual skills themselves. So I'll call out 2 examples in 7, the river management information skills. Knowledge of agency adopted software and technology to assemble, store, and process different kinds of information, data, and relevant to river management. So like that's sort of a, you know, a generic description for me in my work. What that looks like right now is we're transitioning to using Survey 123 software and tablet technology to gather our river encounter data. And so I have knowledge of that. I'm working on my skills there. But I do have the background knowledge for the software and the technology, just as an example there. What it means for you, you need to figure out for what works for your scenario. Let's look at one of the abilities. It says this ability to employ field level data sampling and collection generation methods to assemble relevant and defensible river management related information and data. Okay, so I'm thinking of, we're using some of our Survey 123 collected data about river encounters, how frequently we're seeing other river parties on the river, And my lead river ranger, she needs the ability, I'm wanting her to have the ability to gather that data up at the end of the season, write some summaries, do some trend analysis, and make some recommendations for where we should maybe sample more. Where do we maybe want to consider a management action? That's the ability to use that data. And then skilled at, again, just using an example here, being skilled to follow the protocols to collect, generate data at the field level. Let's not overlook that as a sort of a representative example here. We can train people all day on how to gather the data, but it gets a little confusing once you're on the river. There's actually a skill to doing that right. We have some protocols that account for, on my river, how frequently you see another raft party, whether you count them or not. And so I would consider somebody skilled at that protocol if they're following the protocol correctly. So I'm just trying to use an example there. These are generically written KSAs. It's up to you to define what that looks like in your river situation. Okay, so let's go back up to the top here, and I'm going to keep walking you through this because you're about to start playing with it, and I just want you to have a sense of it. So what we're going to do next here in a minute is we're going to ask you to do a self-assessment. Angie said it at the beginning, and I'll reiterate, you do not have to reveal your results. This is for you to use for yourself or to play with and share with others. So as you see all of these KSAs listed out, would you put a check mark or whatever works for you, whether you have none of that? Like, I don't know anything about one, knowledge of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, totally new to me. You would put, I know nothing there. Maybe you have some awareness of it. You're like, yes, I've taken a class, I've understand some elements of it, but I feel that, you know, I'm not an expert at it. And then moving kind of along a scale there, you've performed it, you know this, like you're pretty solid at it. And then the highest one there, so it's a 4-point scale there, so to speak. You're very experienced, like you're ready to teach this, you're an expert at it, you've got it. So rate yourself between 1 and 4 there. Now the green column and the pink column are also important. Do you know of resources on how to get that KSA? Do you know where to learn more about the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act? Or do you need resources? If you know of something that you want to recommend to others, and we're going to spend the last portion of our presentation sharing out what you know, go ahead and put that in the notes. So it could be, and we'll spend some time on this, I know, but it's a great one to bring up right now, the Provalence courses on Wild and Scenic Rivers. You can say, I know that resource, Provalence, boom, that's what I would recommend for anybody looking for that, to gain that knowledge. But putting an X or whatever you want in the needs resources, that's a visual cue for you to say, I really need to do more on this. And you can listen and gather more resources to focus you on what you need to acquire more knowledge, skill, and ability around. So the first few columns are kind of rating how knowledgeable you are, your ability, your skill, and then the green and pink columns are around, do you know of something, and please do note that, or do you need a resource and you'll pay extra attention as those things come across for you. So I'm just going to start to wrap up here and then turn you loose for a minute here. What we wanted to do here is give you time to work and just do a quick rough draft of your self-assessment. If you do not finish it right now, that is okay. Just get it started. You can do this. You can finish it later. You can even refine it. Maybe you want to get all the way through and then go back and clean up a little bit or tweak it, whatever works for you. We want to give you a few minutes to practice with this. And also, please take time to write out some places where you know, if you do, to acquire these knowledge, skills, and abilities, because we're going to do a brain dump at the end of this. So I'm going to pause for a second here and check in with Angie. Does anybody have a problem having a problem downloading? Let's take a minute if you need any coaching or if you've got a question on how the worksheet, the self-assessment works.
And you're welcome to ask questions in the chat, or right now you can unmute and ask a question as well.
Okay. Not seeing anything yet. We'll stay on the line and available if you come across something and you want to ask. You can put it in the chat or speak aloud. But we are going to turn you loose here in a minute so that you can do this dry run at a self-assessment. I'm going to say this, I did say it a minute ago, and I'm going to say it again. If you feel like this particular set of knowledge, skills, and abilities isn't where you are professionally, just use this as a mock-up. You can go and do the same self-assessment activity with the ones that are in your lane. This is just representative of that entry-level river management specialist KSAs. Okay, Angie, I actually think we're doing great with time.
Yeah.
Let you make a judgment call here. We had sort of talked about 10 minutes. And so I'll leave it to you to make that final judgment call.
Yeah, I would say maybe take 15 minutes. I know this is like a 90-minute session and we're coming up like close to halfway through. So yeah, take 15 minutes, everyone, to kind of work through this, and then also get up and stretch out your legs, get a drink of water if you need to do anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and put up this handy dandy 15-minute timer here. And I'll just have this going on in the background. So we'll meet back when this timer ends. And as Colter mentioned, then we're really gonna have you all share out. We've got some resources to share, and hopefully everyone can walk away with like a big document of resources, whether they need to look into them themselves or they can share it with their staff and coworkers. So yeah, I will go ahead and start the timer. But like Colter mentioned, I will be here. I'm going to turn off my camera, but if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat or unmute. Hi, everyone. I'm just giving you a 2-minute warning, and then we're going to regroup and share out some resources. So, just a prompt to start wrapping up. All right. I'm going to welcome everyone back. Move forward a slide here. Hopefully everyone had some time to dig into that self-assessment sheet and maybe get a glass of water, stretch the legs a little. Well, in this next section, we're gonna kind of review some of the major resources available. We're gonna have the opportunity to share out a bunch of resources that are available. So we do have a few slides of just some resources, and then don't worry, all the links that we're gonna be showing on the slides will be available to you as we build out this document. And Colter, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything as.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll jump in real quick here before we
Yeah.
dive in. Hey, if you had a reaction that you want to share in the chat to doing that, did you learn something about yourself? Did you surprise yourself in any way? We'd love to hear that. Sometimes people might say, boy, I knew more than I realized. Or, yep, there's some areas I want to work on. I could use some more information on. So if you have any hot takes there, we would love to hear that. Because we might focus a little more on that if you give us some feedback with the time that we have. So let us know your reaction to doing that self-assessment. And then the other thing I wanted to say here, as we start to share out the places that we know, Angie, myself, Monica know of, that have a lot of these knowledge, skills, and ability, the information to acquire the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Please realize we're not going to be able today to go through the KSA systematically. We're giving you big like caches of where, or we'll, for maybe river, we'll say big pools of water where there's a lot of this stuff cached up. And it's for you to go and unpack and find what you need. Once you have the big resources from us. And you can start your searching journey. So we're, like I said, we're not going to go through KSA by KSA and like draw like this is here and that is there. It's for you to go and unpack that stuff. Okay, so let's start. I guess another way of putting it is we're going to teach you how to fish. We're going to show you like where this stuff is, but it's for you to find that fish. So, okay, let's turn it back to Angie and she can start working us through some of our big resources here for you to find stuff.
Thanks, Colter. Yeah, so here in a minute, we're going to go through some agency-specific resources that exist, and whether you work for the agency or maybe you work for a nonprofit, but you know which agency manages the nearby wild and scenic river, it can be helpful to know about the agency-specific resources. We'll also talk about the Interagency Wild and Scenic Rivers Coordinating Council that Monica mentioned in the beginning, as well as some RMS resources, as well as others that we've identified. So again, as Colter mentioned, please be thinking of any specific resources here that you might know of that we don't mention. Well, this first one, I'm hoping everyone has heard about the Interagency Wild and Scenic Rivers Coordinating Council at this point, because we've mentioned it a couple times already on this in this session. But this is, as Monica mentioned, the 4 federal wild and scenic river administering agencies have a council where they work together to create interagency guidelines, help improve coordination, and come up with guidance. So this is an extremely valuable resource, and you can find it at rivers.gov. Tons of resources available. They did just recently reorganize rivers.gov. Really encourage you to go check it out. There's some cool new features. But one of the main areas to point you towards is the tab that says River Resources and then Technical Papers. There you're going to find a whole bunch of technical papers about how to write a CRMP or about interim management of a wild and scenic river, about user capacity, all sorts of topics. And I just encourage you to go like scroll through that whole list. However, you'll see here, we did put one link here, and I will add that to the chat here in a minute, as well as our shared document. This is a really cool document here. I'll just pull it up real quick. That actually Monica has recently updated. So Monica, feel free to jump in if there's anything you want to say about this. But this document, it's only 7 pages, not 30 something, is organized by the competency areas. So we have the 8 different competency areas outlined in our core competency document. And then what training and technical papers are related to that competency area. So this is very useful. You can come here and see that there's these provalence modules or these web-based work through at your own pace, asynchronous modules. There's 13 of them. And for example, for this first competency area, modules 1, 2, and 13 relate directly to that. Over here on the far right column, you can see a whole bunch of white papers that are found on rivers.gov that you can access and read about in your own time as you're learning more about wild and scenic rivers. So again, this document goes through each of those competency areas. It also has some recorded webinars from previous wild and scenic river training series that we've done. So we record a lot of these and we put them onto our YouTube channel, and I'll point that out here in a few minutes, but you can also find them listed here in this document. So this was just updated. So highly encourage you to check out this document. You can also access this document on rivers.gov, but I'll put a link here in the chat in a second.
Yeah, while you do that, Angie, I'll fill a little air here. Rivers.gov, generally that website, I think it particularly has a lot of knowledge, skills, and abilities, information related to the first cluster, number 1, Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, history, law, policy, regulation, and quite a bit for number 3, the river management planning. So if you had quite a few in those clusters that said, I need information, I need resources, definitely check out rivers.gov. That's particularly rich for those ones.
I would just like to add something. So Angie has pointed out that this is rivers.gov, the documents that the Interagency Wild and Scenic River Coordinating Council has put together that has resources, technical papers. But I do want to point out, even if you do not have a designated wild and scenic river, the resources that are found on this website are great. And many of the technical papers or trainings would correlate over to non-designated rivers. So just because it has wild and scenic in the name or on the screen, it is a great resource for all rivers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that, Monica. Here, next up, we've got some agency-specific resources, and Colter might be able to speak to some of these manuals and handbooks a little bit better than I can, but you can see here, just lists out some of the different sections that might apply to different parts of managing rivers. So, and we can, again, provide you with this information, so you don't have to be like scrambling to write it all down or anything like that.
Yeah, I will give an overview of it. I know for the Forest Service, and I believe I know for the other federal land management agencies for sure. We sort of have a filing system of resources that's sort of like, it's like the Dewey Decimal System, if you remember that. And so you'll see those numbers on this slide here. You don't have to memorize that particularly. The reason why I've put this slide together here was to see that, to show you that in our manual and handbook, that whole filing system, there's resources on river recreation management. There's also resources on grants and cooperative agreements, planning, land ownership. Help go walk through those resources to learn about policy guidelines on these major topics if you work for the Forest Service or work with the Forest Service as a partner. And you'll be able to check mark your KSA boxes in quite a few places here. These relate to KSAs through the whole document. So we'll move on from this particular one, but that was the background there. Oh yeah, so now there's this. We have a number of internal coordinating resources. Well, no, some of them are public facing too. But anyways, the first one here is our Wild and Scenic River Program SharePoint site. Like these are sort of like best practices, knowledge, peer-to-peer sharing website within the Forest Service. If you want to check it out. So you can see all of the U.S. Forest Service managed wild and scenic rivers and access some information about how we manage those rivers, and also our interactive visitor map that I think is particularly informative because you can see where a river falls within a national forest, is adjacent to wilderness, is in wilderness. You can see a lot of the land management status type of stuff there, and search out for wild and scenic rivers as well.
So then similarly, here we have some of the different handbooks and manuals from the Bureau of Land Management, in particular, Manual 6400 that relates to wild and scenic rivers. But similar to what Colter said, just because it says wild and scenic rivers does not mean it can't be useful for any river, regardless of designation. And so here we have the Wild and Scenic Rivers Manual. We've got the BLM Handbook on Visual Resource Inventory, as well as the BLM Handbook on Land Use Planning. Monica, if you want to add anything else before I move on to Park Service, feel free to jump in.
The only thing I would add is in that first link, when you go to, it takes you to the policy manual. But within that location are the other manuals related to BLM. And same thing with the handbook. If you back to the handbook section, it lists all the handbooks related to BLM. And as Angie mentioned, there's other handbooks that would apply to river management, such as the Planning for Recreation and Visitor Services. There's a special recreation permitting handbook. All those are located within these links. They would assist you with your river management.
Similar to Forest Service and BLM, we've got for the Park Service, the Director's Order number 46, as well as the Reference Manual 46. So those two things are used in combination. I've also listed out here the Wild Scenic Rivers Program webpage for the Park Service. The Park Service does also help manage partnership wild and scenic rivers. So there's some extra information on that. And if you're not familiar with partnership wild and scenic rivers, I encourage you to check out some prior training and webinar videos that we've got on that. Also the Nationwide Rivers Inventory webpage and database links there as well. And then also for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, as part of their comprehensive conservation planning process, there's some information there at this link, as well as their handbook library, which had like dozens upon dozens of handbooks, just depending on the aspect that you're working with around rivers, which handbook you might need. I didn't have room to list them all out, but you can find them at that library. And then also the Fish and Wildlife Service Wild and Scenic Rivers webpage, where it really talks about which wildlife refuges have wild and scenic rivers and any plans for them that they might have to share. So this is just some of the agency guidance that's available. These are most of the main ones. Some other resources that are available is I do have to share that RMS, River Management Society, we produce a lot of resources around wild and scenic rivers and just rivers in general. Again, it doesn't have to be wild and scenic, but we offer all types of different professional development opportunities. And in particular, the River Training Center, we focus on all sorts of different topics. In addition to wild and scenic rivers, we look at stream bank restoration, river access planning, river ranger field skills. And for example, we do a river ranger rendezvous every year, which brings together river rangers to share best practices and share ideas of how to effectively manage the river on the ground in their positions. And then we also work with the A- Collaborative to provide some anti-discrimination and anti-sexual harassment training. And these are just some of the topics. Again, I encourage you to check out our River Training Center page for more up-to-date information. I will just plug, we are going to be releasing some information soon about a 4-part hydropower insight webinar series. So if you're working with hydropower or with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and that might be part of that, I think, core competency number 3, or maybe it's number 2, other relevant policies. So that might be a webinar series that you're interested in. And then,
Can I jump? Can you go to that last slide? I just want to put a plug in and draw a connection here. Angie mentioned the A- work. That's the anti-discrimination and sexual harassment training topic. If you haven't participated in river management delivery of that information, I recommend it. I have really learned a lot, and it has really influenced the way I'm viewing my workplace, how people treat me, how I treat other people, and how other people treat the people around me. But my point here is I want to promote that, but also connect it back to the KSAs. If you look at collaboration and engagement techniques, that's number 8 on our KSA or our core competency lists. That stuff in there relates: working as a team member, employing listening skills, involving others, etc. So just to use an example of some of the stuff that River Management Society is delivering, the A- curriculum, that is one way to fill out your knowledge, skill, and ability around collaboration and engagement techniques. That's, I think, particularly well done. So there we go.
Thanks, Colter. And I will share a link to the A- Collaborative here in the chat. We did a webinar series last year. You can check out all the recordings by going to the A- Collaborative website. And then the video channel, the RMS video channel, as well as just like YouTube, can be a really great resource, right? There's a lot of other videos that RMS hasn't produced that are on YouTube that are really informative. And we sometimes pull those into our playlists. But here, real quick, I will just show you, if you go to the River Management Society YouTube page, I'd like to highlight that we have a bunch of playlists that we've been building out. And we even have a playlist. Here, okay, we got the playlists all here. You know, we can see like diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and access and river management. We've got one on hydropower, but the one I want to point out here is like, for example, competency number 1 around wild and scenic rivers. We have a whole playlist for wild and scenic rivers. Stop that before it tries to play. Got a fun little image up there, but what I really want to point out is here on the side, you can see all the videos that we have around wild and scenic rivers, for example, and I think we got like 41 videos. You can see prior webinars, section 7, user capacity, writing ORV statements. You can find a lot of information here. So just one place of many that you can access videos. Let me go back to this. All right. All right, some other resources to share and just kind of like go through these quick. You know, we've got the National Rivers Project. That is a project of RMS, and it's really for those looking to recreate on rivers. We're providing a lot of like put in and take out information. And so that's a great resource. If your river's not on there and you'd like to get it included, reach out to us. There's the Interagency Visitor Use Management Council. That should say council there. If you're dealing with visitor use management or user capacity, they have a bunch of resources and guides there as well. Encourage you to look out to fish, wildlife, and game park agencies in your state. They can have some helpful resources. Center for Outdoor Ethics, that's more those river field skills.
Could I speak? I just want to speak real quick. The Interagency Visitor Use Management website, which has such good stuff and a lot of great river examples. If you felt like you had a number of need resources related to visitor use management and monitoring number 5, you're going to fill your whole need right there. Information cache. So just pointing out what most connects here.
Thanks, Colter. And then some of these other ones, like the Center for Outdoor Ethics and Leave No Trace training, you know, again, that's more that river field skills, American Whitewater, just a great resource of information about rivers, American rivers as well. And then American Canoe Association, I know that they have some like actual on-water workshops and trainings. So I think that would relate again to that field skills category. We've mentioned Provalence. They have like a whole wild and scenic module or 13 module course that I mentioned, but they also have a lot of other resources out there. If you're looking to develop your interpretive skills and as you're working with the public, they have courses on foundations of interpretation. Might be something worth checking out. Also, like a totally random one that I've come across is Idaho Rivers United has a pretty cool wild and scenic stewardship guide certification program. It's all online where you work through at your own pace. And then some of these others listed, like Whitewater Rescue Institute and Rescue 3 International, they offer like swiftwater rescue training, depending on what job you're working in. You might need that, you might not. So just some extra resources. And then the USGS Water Watch, I think that one's more about like stream flows. So it could be useful for monitoring or data management. At this point, though, we want to kind of open it up to folks and to share resources. So I'm going to put a link in the chat to a collaborative document that everyone has access to, and that we can start adding other resources that you found. And in the beginning, I was gonna like do it by competency area, but then really, you know, when you look at this, a lot of these resources can hit multiple competency areas. So you will see it is just a list, and I just put it in the chat. So if you click on that document in the chat, it should open up and you can add to it. And what it looks like here is it's just a Google document. You should be able to edit it without signing in, like I mentioned. And here's some of the resources that we've mentioned so far, so that we put in the chat, like the technical core competencies document and a link to the self-evaluation, the summary of available resources as organized by the competencies. So feel free to start adding something. And also, I'd like to point out at the end, if you want a copy of this, a really easy way to do it is you come over here to File and Download, and you can download your own copy of this. You can continue building this out. Also, I will be sending this document that we've made at the end of the session. I will be sending that out along with the recording to everyone who's registered. So if the Zoom session ends and you're like, oh no, I lost the link, I will be sending this out again, so you will have access to that.
Hey, Angie, there was a request for the PDF of the PowerPoint as well. Are you sending that along with the recording?
Yep, I can definitely do that. That way you have access to all those Forest Service manual numbers and BLM manual numbers and things like that. So I'm curious if any folks have any specific resources that they've found particularly helpful and how they've been helpful, or even if people have perhaps like real world case studies that you've found beneficial to put in here. And I'm gonna keep adding some things here while I open it up and let others share.
I think this is where it gets fun for us as presenters, is we want to hear from you now. So as you were working on your worksheet, your self-assessment, if you wrote down, yeah, I know where this is, I know how I got that, here's where someone else can go find it. That's what we want to hear from you now, and we'll get it added to the list. So if you want to come off of mute or share your idea in the chat, but we want to hear from you and how it connects.
I put in the dreamflows.com, which is a great website that consolidates a lot of stream flow gauges and runnable water levels for different flows, and also links to guides on basically rivers, and it's full of, good information and links.
Oh, right on. And so I'm looking for where some of that shows up on our assessment, stream flow type of stuff, river management field skills, that relates there. Probably shows up in a few places. Thanks for sharing that, Noah.
I'm adding in some more that we've mentioned here, but again, would love to see, and you're welcome to just like scroll down and start typing away if there's some. Ooh. Seeing some coming in now.
We've had some people in the past share podcasts that I didn't know of that were super interesting, and now I listen to. So don't think of it as only as a written resource. There's all kinds of different things that people come up when we start brain dumping together here.
I was just gonna plug the technical core competencies really quick for a template in creating job descriptions and hiring staff. They were perfect. The language was right there. I just plopped it into a qualified candidate shall. You guys did all my work for me. Thanks.
You're welcome, Tony. We're thinking just of you as we did that. Actually, let's take a minute and talk about that. These KSAs are used in the federal employment system. and I think are also used elsewhere, but definitely in the federal employment system, where there'll be bullets in a job application that says has knowledge, skill, or ability to do this. And so you can go back and cross-check with this knowledge, skills, and abilities list. And you might say, if you're filling out a job application or filling out your resume, you can match that language, or show where you've gotten that knowledge, skill, and ability. I've taken this training. I've used this resource to gain my KSA. So you can use this both as a job manager to, like Tony was saying there, to fill out a job description, to develop a job description, but you can also use it as an applicant to explain how you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do river management work, and use some key phrases and places you've got that stuff from. Oh, interesting. Colorado Public Radio Parched Podcast. Thanks for whoever shared that. I'm going to check that out. Sort of probably talks, I'm guessing, about some social dynamics, some science type of stuff. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it came out this spring and summer and is a great resource if folks, I know a lot of people that aren't in Colorado know a lot about the Colorado River, but it's a great resource if you're looking for some place to start.
Not me. Yeah, right on. Thanks for sharing that.
I'll just plug a couple that I just added here at the bottom of our list so far. SOBA, this is the State's Organization for Boating Access, and it's a group of folks that work on boating access, and it's not just non-motorized. One thing that they did come up with was a guide for multiple use waterway management, and I can put a link in that right there. But they have a whole library of resources that would fall under maybe that river planning competency area that are related to planning for boating access, not only physically, but thinking about like who's accessing the rivers as well. And they have a database of access. Also point out the Society for Outdoor Recreation Professionals has some resources and working groups. And then there's also the Association of Outdoor Recreation and Education. This tends to be a little bit more, in my experience, like outdoor programs at different universities, but they also produce a lot of great information, especially around like diversity and inclusion that I found. So some resources there.
Angie, do you have the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators?
I did not put that on there, NASBLA, but that is a great one that we should add to this list.
They have some really rad, kind of pricey, but really rad field courses and instruction, boat operation stuff.
Yeah, that is a good call.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Tony. I hadn't heard of that before, so I'm learning.
And I know we have only about 5 minutes left, so I also just want to open it up for people to ask any other questions, or like if there's any clarification needed around anything, or any other resources that you want to share. As I add some NASBLA resources. Ooh. One that I just thought of that we don't have on the list, but it would kind of go into that other relevant laws and policies. Competency area would be some of the resources that the Hydropower Reform Coalition has put together. And then also one that I've been finding interesting recently, I think I'm back here. On the first page, Gear Garage Whitewater TV. This has been a really interesting YouTube channel to follow. They do a lot of like river field skills, but through videos in short segments. And so in particular, like they have a video on scene size up when you come upon a potential incident on the river, whether you're a ranger or however you're interfacing with the river, and they kind of like pause and then they'll show from an aerial view what different folks are doing, and they kind of break it down almost whiteboard style. And so if you're doing any training with seasonals or field staff, it could be a great way to do some pre-work before you get out on the water so you can best utilize your time on the water practicing things, or to give good visuals when, sometimes on the water it can be hard to hear each other or see the whole scene. So some really cool videos there as well. And then I also want to highlight the National Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Skills Institute. This has been going on since 2021. It's a virtual couple days of training. If you go to this website, you can have access to all of their previous videos. There's a lot of great sessions from 2022, and 2023. And then also it has dates. We're going to be doing this live on June 5th and 6th. It's free and open to anyone. So another great place to come and build your skills and find even more resources. This is like a pretty awesome list of places to start.
Yeah, so I want to throw in a last thought or two here for everybody. So we hope that we previewed for you some of those big caches of where you can acquire knowledge, skills, and abilities through some of the agency resources, River Management Society resources, the Interagency Wild and Scenic River Council, which is also rivers.gov too. And then we've got this brainstorm going on this worksheet that has a bunch of other stuff too. And it's for you to go and seek out resources to address and fill in the gaps for your knowledge, skills, and abilities, move the needle a little further, either for yourself or maybe you're at a place where you want to share this with somebody. So Forest Service in my area is doing a fair amount of hiring right now for entry-level employees, and we're picking up 2 new river rangers. And they have some of this. They have a few things here, like they've got the field skills, but they don't have the whole package. They maybe don't have the river management planning stuff that's appropriate for their level. And so I want them to do this self-assessment, get empowered, and then go seek out some of this information, and that'll make up a training plan for them. And so I'm going to remind you that if this activity was useful, but you find yourself or your staff in a different place on that spectrum of specialist, non-specialist, expert, what was it, fully functional or something? There's entry level, fully functioning, and expert. You can go and do this same reflection activity, self-assessment, or encourage somebody else to do with the KSAs that are appropriate there if you go back to that source document. So I hope you found this time was useful. And it's always fun for me to, when I do this, share with others or hear from others about the resources you have to learn about this world.
Yes, thanks, Colter. And I did see Marion in the chat, you posted, what do you recommend for urban rivers? And a lot of these can be used for urban rivers. I also know like River Network does a lot of stuff around kind of like organizing climate resilient communities, and sometimes they focus more on urban. So I put a link there to some of their resources, as well as they do a lot of like water advocacy work and drinking water work. So that might be helpful. All right. Well, I think that is all for today. Again, I'll be sending out this document. I'll send out the slides and I'll send out the recording to everyone. It'll probably take like the rest of the day for me to process the video, but I'll get it out to you as soon as possible. And I hope to see everyone again on actually February 21st. In just a couple weeks, we're going to be doing our next session on the importance of writing good, strong, quality ORV descriptions. So I hope to see you there. And just thanks again to all of you for joining, and thanks again to Colter and Monica for sharing a bunch of information with us today.